Hi, I'm Mary Lindsay Wilson with the Lone Star Dowsers, and I'm delighted to see you guys tonight. Before we get started, I've got a few announcements. Bear with me. We, we have Julie Gunn, and Raymond Grace is going to be our speaker in May. And in June, we're actually planning to be online and in person, and we're going to be working with our favorite naturopath, Gwen Foster. So about that, our donations make this possible. So if you would like to send a check or do PayPal, it's on our newsletter that we send out with this. That would be greatly appreciated. Some chapters, there's week dowsing Zooms that help aid in relief from fires, drought, heat waves, and floods. And that's every Tuesday. The Tucson Dowsers do that. And there's also a dowsing for the planet every Thursday night on Zoom. And this is hosted by our friends from Australia, Heather Wilkes and Francis Peter. So it's Healing Australia and Beyond. And those links will also be in the newsletter and the replay. If you want to douse and contribute to those things, you are. And I am personally excited about, I'm excited about a lot of things that we do here, but I have experienced this personally. And I think that this is something that that all of us, humanity is really suffering with are traumas and a lot of unresolved traumas and upsets. So, it can leave us feeling tense, triggered, anxious, and just not as resilient as that we know we can be. And so, what we're going to talk about tonight is how to shift our nervous system from fight or flight or freeze and get our parasympathetic state where we can get calm and restore our baseline of peace. And Julie has so many fabulous techniques. Um, I will just tell you a little bit about her and then let her kind of expound on the introduction. So, Julie Gosh lives in Driftwood, and she is a born and raised Texan. She has lived overseas in England and Turkey, um, and I'm sure she's had quite a few adventures. She is the owner of Tolmao. Did I say that correctly?
Tolmao, whatever.
Tolmao, wellness. It's a wellness boutique that provides a multifaceted approach to well-being and vibrancy. And Tolmao, how did I say it one more time for me?
Tolmao, but however you want. Tolmao.
Tolmao is a Greek word for courage, and it's Julie's passion to stand with others as they courageously take responsibility for their own health and wellness. She holds lots of certifications in various healing modalities, and some of her primary tools are havening, biofield tuning, the flow presso, a red light therapy, PEMF, and I'm sure she's got a few others that we can talk about too. She just has quite an enormous toolkit, and she's going to share some of those things with us tonight. So welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I've been on the watching end of this, so it's fun to be participating this way.
Yeah. You want to just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and maybe tell your story about how you got to this place and the fabulous things that you do?
Sure. Yes. So um, I think I've always been involved in healing in some way. I can't say always, I guess, not since like birth, but even as a young girl and going into my teens, I'm just fascinated with health. My family, my family calls me Dr. Julie because I'm not a doctor, but they just come to me. It seems to somehow it just went that way because I'm always giving out the resources for mental healing, physical healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing. So I think it's just always been drawn to healing in general, and really for myself tremendously because working on my own self and with my family. I have two sons, they're 25 and 27. But kind of that's been just an MO of mine, like not to teach or talk or share or work with on somebody on something I'm not deeply putting into practice myself. I'm a coach as well, and so that holds true for that too. And so that's really fun. I mean, I just love that. It's like I'll try something out for me. Some of my certifications have just been me pursuing what I wanted here first, and then it was something that ended up being so great I could share that. Um, I was in the church for a long time in my teens, 20s, 30s, and did a lot of, I think I started getting involved in emotional healing then through some pretty cool tools and certifications in that realm. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I just, I've kind of just kept expanding. So I want to say this when you were saying something you were saying a minute ago, and I thought, oh, I just like simple, practical, clear, easy, gentle, applications whenever possible. And that's what I like what we're going to talk about tonight because I'm not a neuroscientist. That's a disclaimer. I've just done a lot of studies. Someone on here might know more about neuroscience than me. That's totally great and fine. I'll do my best to explain things the way I understand them to be. But so everything I would say that I do in this clinic and in my practice is a really amazing simple tool, and it's something that I can do one-on-one with somebody and take it a certain way, but then a lot of things are tools people can apply for themselves in their own time, and we'll talk about that tonight, do some examples of some things. So that's what I love about tonight too. I just want it to be really practical for people.
Absolutely. And my intention with this is to educate and inform and then give people practical tools that they can use and as needed and share.
Yes,
So,
definitely sure. Yeah.
okay, fabulous. So I have personally experienced your havening. I mean, I know you have lots of tools. Do you want to talk about the amygdala and kind of trauma response and just sort of let people know what happens in the body and maybe give examples of being triggered and or because
Sure.
trauma and
Yeah.
PTSD is not just someone who's been in combat. We
Mhm.
can experience it in everyday life.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's good you said that because, well, let me back up a step. But before I got certified in havening, I would not say that I was working with trauma per se. I mean, there's big T, little t, but I kind of didn't like that word because I thought, oh, it's really misused a lot, probably. And then people can kind of use it even as an excuse sometimes. I mean, not all the time, of course, but there's just a lot around trauma. So um, I wasn't necessarily drawn to trauma work. But when I found havening, and there's something that really drew me to havening, which I'll get on in a minute. But I have learned so much about just, well, the amygdala. I'll talk about the amygdala. And so, really, if we never use the word trauma again, we don't need to, because it's just those things that become encoded in the amygdala. And it can be something so simple. I once heard a story, this is not a personal story, but a woman who'd been bulimic for like 30 years. And they were able to trace it back to when she was in kindergarten, walking home with her friends, her girlfriends one day. And one girl tried to put her, how you put your fingers around someone's wrist,
Mm-hmm.
around her wrist. Oh, you're fat. I can't get my fingers around your wrist. And that was the beginning for her of that pattern and trigger around weight, and bulimia became something later. But it can be something so simple, as we all know. And the
That we
amygdala,
just internalize. And for people who don't
yeah,
know what the amygdala is,
yeah,
would you?
right, yeah. So it's part of the limbic system in the brain, and it's really a set of neurons. It's so interesting to think about it that way. For some reason, I don't know what we think is the brain is all made of, but it's really just a set of neurons in the brain. And and I'll talk in just a second about what these four things are to have an encoding in the amygdala. Um, but when these four things, well, let me just say what they are. When the four things happen, and then I'll tell you what happens in the amygdala, and you'll have a really good understanding of why you get triggered, why something can trigger you so fast. Because I'll tell you what happens. Um, And let me say a little bit about how I know this. And the Rudin brothers, they're these twins, they're in probably 80 now. Um, and they invented this technique by trying to understand why EFT worked, why tapping worked. So everything I'm about to say about the amygdala are they're neuroscientists. So they can't say this 100%, but after all of their study and research, this is what they think happens in the amygdala. So just want to say that. Um, but when we call them IMLEs. So there has to be an event. So like in what I just mentioned, somebody putting her fingers around that girl's wrist, something happened. And then that
Mhm.
event has to have a meaning to the individual, an emotional meaning, right? Like, so in that moment, the meaning was, oh, well, maybe it's I'm embarrassed socially here with my peers, right? There was or uh, who knows what judgment she had about herself and weight already, whatever. There was a significant meaning. And then the landscape of the brain in that moment needs to be vulnerable. So, and so many things we can have a vulnerable landscape. Maybe this morning in a certain setting, my brain was more resilient because I'd slept well, I'd had a good breakfast, I was feeling good, I was grounded. But possibly this evening, something might have happened in my day. I might have had a fight with a best friend or something, and it left me more vulnerable. So the landscape can change that fast, if that makes sense. So it's not like we're just always resilient in our landscape. So the moment of the encoding, the landscape has to have some vulnerability. Like puberty is an especially vulnerable landscape time in the brain. That's why so many people end up having what we might call traumatic encodings in puberty because there's so much going on, the hormones and socially, right, and all of that. So the third component is the landscape, being vulnerable. And then there has to be a perceived sense of inescapability. So, like in that example again, she might have felt, I can't get out of this situation. She's not trapped literally, she could have run, but in her mind, right, she was there with the peers, she felt trapped. So it doesn't have to be a physical trapping like, claustrophobia, you really got stuck in something, right? All you have to do is feel, I perceive that I can't escape this, even if I can't escape the emotion of this. So you can
Mhm.
see how a lot of things can pretty simply have those four components to them. And so when those four are met, um, the amygdala, there's something called I'm not going to get too scientific, but it's called an AMPA receptor. And it's something that's in the neurons of the amygdala. And I kind of like to think of it as this little receptor emerges on the surface of, we call it the lateral amygdala, this little receptor. And then you have a cascade of chemicals and hormones and things like that. So what it does is it binds that receptor. So the receptor might get activated and highlighted, but then it goes back down. Okay. But these receptors, when you have the four components of an encoding, they get like super glued on the surface of the amygdala. Okay. So that's what happens right then is how something gets encoded. And with that can come the cognitive aspects, the thoughts, maybe the beliefs, you know what I mean, that come with that experience or that event, the autonomic responses, the heart beating fast, the butterflies in the stomach, that can be encoded as well. The somatosensory, that can be encoded. The emotional content, the fear of rejection, all of that can get encoded. So it becomes, you can see why it becomes such a and all that's getting super glued. So along comes a trigger in life, and that receptors are fired again. They're waiting for that thing to occur again, right? So that's why something comes along and triggers it and reminds you of that. And that's why we just all of a sudden feel out of control sometimes with things, right?
Even when
That
it's something
emotional,
simple, like your
very
your person you talked about, maybe she could say, "Oh, how do I look in this dress?" And maybe she didn't get the response she wanted, and I could see that could be a trigger, or yeah. So
exactly.
these
Yeah.
buttons
So
stay on, these receptors get stuck. They
yes, that gets stuck essentially. Yes. And so um, any number of components can come along. Like this same girl, I mean, this is an example. Later on in life, somebody might just put their hand around her wrist. Maybe somebody's looking at her bracelet and but they put their fingers around her wrist again. Anything like that. So it doesn't, you certainly don't have to have all four of those things again, or all the cognitive. You can have one piece and you feel that trigger. And then here comes the cortisol and the norepinephrine and those chemicals start to come. So that's why what you said at the beginning about, we can call it trauma, or let's just look at like stress in our lives and all that that causes in terms of disease and mental and emotional distress. But, the stress is because we have, some of the times that stress is because we have a lot of these encoded things, encoded moments we have not known how to unencode, right? And so enough of those triggers, and then man, our stress bucket's full, our resilience goes out the window. We all know what that feels like. Pretty
Yeah, and
intense.
your coping skills, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've, hindsight, look at different things in my life where someone would just ask me a simple question and it just, you sometimes you're near tears, right? And it has nothing to
Yeah.
do with what they're asking, right? So it's this response, yeah, so it can kind of sneak up at different times.
Definitely.
That's
And
yeah,
I like when you at the beginning, resilience, that is what that's, I don't know, that's so important to me. It's so important to me for my own life and any way I could support others in being more resilient, because in my opinion, the world just gets a little harder all the time and more confusing and more chaotic. And the more resilient we can be to all of these things, the healthier we'll be, the better life, not just the better life, but right, the less potential for disease, um, messed up relationships, whatever you call it, more trauma is happening. And that's the other thing too. Man, when you've got a vulnerability, when your landscape is vulnerable in a particular area, that makes you more susceptible to another encoding. So, right. So we really want to be
so it's
building
just
more
layering
resilience.
on top of one another. Yeah. 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 And, instead of having grace and ease, it's kind of stress and strife, or maybe it's stress and strife in a particular area. Yeah, all of the above. If you guys that are tuning in, if you have questions, if you want to put them in the chat, I will do my best to work them in as we can. You're doing a great job of breaking this down into really bite-sized pieces. So thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
can I
we
add something real
yeah.
quick? Can I add something? Just because I just thought of it, is that I hope in even explaining that, there's
Okay.
already more. Oh, um, should I stop? Can I keep
No,
going?
that's okay. Everybody needs
Okay.
to be muted, but you and I, and they need to
Okay.
write their questions in the chat, and then I'll read them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say, I hope there's, even after just hearing that, more self-compassion already, if you didn't know what I just shared, because our amygdala, we call in the Havening community, we call her Amy, Amy, the amygdala. And because we feel like personifying this part of the brain actually really helps with self-understanding and self-compassion, because this part of the brain is there, absolutely there to protect and serve us. But it's frustrating at times when somebody's been dealing with something that's so triggering for so long, or destabilizing or disempowering, to be angry and frustrated, at our brain and that whole mechanism. But self-compassion really supports healing, because even when you think, oh, that's just my amygdala, right then that gives you some space between that and that reaction you're having, versus what's wrong with me? I'm doing it again. Why can't I get over this? It's more like, oh, that's just Amy. Okay, I have some tools, which we'll talk about. I can work with her on this, and that's really, I think that's super important. We don't need any more judgment and self-condemnation. So, yeah.
Exactly. And I think so many times I find, at least with some of my work, that some part of us was triggered at some point in early childhood, and then we make a decision, it gets locked in about a certain thing. And then that creates, the beliefs and the amygdala being, imprinted in a non-beneficial way. And that part of ourselves will just keep, it takes over instead of the adult that
Yeah.
can, have more discernment and make
Yeah.
better choices.
Right. For
Yeah.
sure.
So, and I know you've got some other tools in your tool bag. Do they also help with the amygdala?
Yes. And I'll talk a minute. I think you'd hopefully you all will find this interesting. I work with a nonprofit called Peaceful Heart Network, and you can look that up. That's some wonderful people who are actually havening practitioners, NLP practitioners, and they work all over the world. And very simply, so they use very simple self-havening, which we'll get to, and then what we call trauma tapping. So I can even go through that if we have time, but it's really helpful. So they're working with genocide victims, usually in Africa, people who've really seen horrific stuff, and it's all content free. So it's really powerful. So no one is ever sharing their experience, and you can do this in a group as well. And that's the beautiful thing as well with what we've seen that can help the amygdala heal and help take away this encoding is it's not actually something that needs to be talked about. Obviously, sometimes we want to talk about the experience, but sometimes in the sharing of it, especially when it's maybe been something very severe, like the populations they're working with, talking about it is triggering again or re-traumatizing. So that's the beauty too. Like all you really got to do is activate that by feeling, and like you're usually already feeling something in the body, like that sense of despair or loneliness or fear, and that just feeling that fires up that receptor again that I talked about on the neurons. And so that's when we come along with simple trauma tapping or havening, and it's like, okay, this is kind of cool. It's like so we've got this similar emotional response to the real event, right? We got it. So we've tapped into it just a little bit, nothing extreme, just tapping enough to start feeling it in the body. And so then right at that moment when this receptor is kind of waiting for something bad to happen in a sense, right? Or expecting the same thing, we come along with havening touch or with tapping. And so it's in that moment bringing in that's why a safe haven. So it's like showing the whole system safety in the middle of that activation. So that's where we produce delta waves with the tapping and with the havening. We call that an electroceutical, low frequency electroceutical, which is the delta wave. So it's kind of like you distract the working memory, you stop thinking about it, you don't focus on the event. Um, and we come along with this electroceutical, and that's where they're finding the amygdala can release that encoding. And I'll share more about that. But I like trauma tapping because there's no words needed at all. So it's actually going through a process that probably, if you're familiar with tapping, but you just focus on the sensation for a moment and then do a couple rounds of tapping, and then you go back in and see how you feel. And it is healing these very, very traumatized people. It's remarkable. And they're so faithful to do it. Like I think in some of those populations, like in these African villages, they don't
Mm-hmm.
have all these tools that we have and all this understanding. Do you know what I mean? They're surviving. And you just come along and teach them something super simple like self-havening and trauma tapping, and they're just doing it, and they believe it works and it's working. You don't have to, I'm not saying you have to come along and believe it, but they're seeing tremendous healing is what I'm saying. So I think we can try to keep it as simple as possible and see some pretty amazing things. So, and I'm not saying there's not really complex
Simple is
cases, but
good. Simple
yeah.
is good. Yeah. And obviously, if you don't have to discuss what's going on, if you're in a situation where you can't talk and verbally process things, you could be doing the trauma tapping, for yourself and um, really change where you're at.
Yes, definitely. And so that is definitely, you mentioned the nervous system. That's significantly going to help the nervous system. And really, now I can just say this actually here, like you can look up Peaceful Heart Network. They actually tell you, I mean, it's all their content is free and stuff. So if you're interested in the trauma tapping, if you go to that website and kind of find your way through, it's going to show you exactly how to do it. So it's all, there's even an app that you can go along with or whatever, but some really good resource on there.
It's great.
So yeah, definitely. What else? You asked about the nervous system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, I mean, we can definitely do some really good examples in here tonight. Those are some of the two big tools I have, you know, along with the flow presso, which I do, which is remarkable for the nervous system. So,
Okay, tell me the website. I'll type it in.
oh, okay. Peaceful Heart Network.
Okay.
Oh, I know what I want to say too.
Network .org probably.
I think so. I think it's org.
Okay.
It
We're
should
going to
pop
say it's
right up.
org. If it's not org, then we're going to
Yeah,
try
it's
net
org.
or something else. So the
I was going to say when we this is what's going to be good, I hope, tonight, if people will walk away with the tools, because when we do find ourselves triggered, if we, and that's a whole other word in itself. I wish there was another word. That word gets overused. Stimulated, reactive. But if we will actually, if we can have a tool or tools that we'll use right away, that's actually really going to help the amygdala heal and the nervous system versus I've now gone all day and I'm still super agitated. And you know what I'm saying? It's like if we can interrupt pretty quickly, that's going to really support our healing, if that makes sense. So you got some simple tools. I mean, everybody on here probably knows about box breathing or rhythmic breathing or deep abdominal breathing with long, slow
you
exhales.
want
I
to
mean,
just
those
talk
right
about the
there.
box breathing, just in case people don't.
Yeah, yeah. So box breathing is inhale with a certain count. So you could inhale to the count of 4 and then hold. You hold your breath for 4 and then you exhale for 4 and hold for 4. So, or you can do 5 or 6 seconds, whatever works for you. But um, I think it's one of the easiest tools we have at our disposal all the time, and we can forget about it. Maybe it can go out the window because we start to shallow breathe. But man, a minute of, I mean, one of my favorite is just, you know, a really large abdominal breath, but then the slowest exhale that I can do, you know, just the longest, slowest exhale that stimulates the parasympathetic so fast. But you know, when we get anxious, sometimes we hype up that breathing. So it's just really being able to interrupt that and remember, be significant change for ourselves or
Yeah.
impact.
All right. So we've got
Yeah.
box breathing, we've got the trauma tapping, and we've got the havening so far. Do we want to do you want to talk about some more techniques, or do we want to dive into a havening demonstration?
Um, let me. Why don't I talk about flow pressor for a moment because we're on
Yeah.
certain things, and then because people can look this up, see if there's one near them. If anyone wants to email me, I can talk to our headquarters and get a listing of where they are near you, or if they are near you.
And so
Um,
I put Julie's email and her website. It's at the top of the chat. It'll also be in the replay. So, yeah.
okay.
So, talk to us about more tools that are available. So, what is the Flow Presso?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's not something you can buy right now for your own house, but if you could find a clinic or practitioner near you, um, I cannot talk more highly about this and the impact. It is a suit. You can look this up on my website. I have videos and different things, but um, it's a suit. It sounds so funny, like a space suit. What is a suit? You wrap the feet,
That's
you
what I
wrap the leg.
immediately go to is the
Yeah,
spacesuit.
I know, right? You wrap your torso, you wrap your arms, and we just the wrapping process with somebody is incredibly soothing and empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Like yes, it's compression, deep pressure, and infrared heat. And somebody might say, well, what about the, you know, Normatec boots or the, you know, there are compression things out there, but there's not anything that has this one-on-one kind of intimate connection where you wrap someone's individually and you make sure it fits them just right. And so there's something about people getting on the table and lying down and we're having a little chat and I'm wrapping them. And then I turn this machine on and it mimics the lymphatic with compression and deep pressure. And then you get really, your organs and core gets really heated. So here's what's interesting though. It was designed by a lymphatic expert in New Zealand working with a doctor in Phoenix, Arizona, who's heals chronic illness. and lymph is at the core of his program for chronic illness. And they're like manual lymph specialists and all of that. But he said to her,
So
here's,
anybody that may not know about lymph
okay,
is the way that toxins travel out of our body. And
correct.
we have to get that lymph flowing. It does not necessarily move on its own.
Correct. And I'll tell you, after I've been in my deep dive, I'm starting to think it's part of some. I don't even know. I like it's. I feel like it's almost intentional why we are not taught about the lymphatic system, because we're taught about the cardiovascular system, and that actually runs autonomically, right? I mean, it just does its own thing. We don't have to do anything to have our heart beat and our blood pumped, but we do need to participate with the lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system is connected right there with the fascia. And maybe people in here know that another way we talk about, emotional content in our lives or reactivity or whatever is being stored in the fascia, right? A lot of people think, I mean, I do too, that we have emotions that get stored there in the fascia tissue. And so
I think there's
they
been a lot
work
of books
together.
about the body does not lie. It stores
Yeah,
things.
yes, right. So so even just working your lymph system, moving your lymphatic system every day is actually going to help you emotionally, because you're pulling the toxins out of the extracellular matrix and able to help the body eliminate them. But they do go hand in hand. And so, oh God, I was losing my train of thought. Yeah, so we think of lymphatics as letting go. Moving your lymph is actually letting go, not just of physical stuff, but emotional stuff. So when you have a 40-minute session in this suit, oh, I know what I was going to say. It was designed with this doctor to help people speed up their healing. Like it was like, we got to do something that helps people heal more quickly. So that's what she designed. But what was inadvertently discovered is that it is deeply impactful and on anxiety and on stress and on sleep and on the nervous system. So she knew there was a correlation between the parasympathetic and the lymphatic system, because like when you're in deep sleep at night and you're in parasympathetic, that's when the lymph system is pretty active. That's part of why, chronic sleep conditions is very harmful to the lymphatic system, because it's not actually getting, it's getting stifled. But she has an interesting theory, like maybe the lymphatic flowing well is actually what's helping us be in more parasympathetic, versus the opposite. And she's like, not sure. She says, I'm going to learn, because I think we're going to come up with something here in our studies. But so where I was going with that is that this suit, so if you could find a suit near you, do it, whether you feel like you have a lot going on or don't have a lot going on, because it will reset your nervous system significantly. And it usually takes anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 for somebody. I mean, 3 is an average.
Sessions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 3 sessions. But I kid you not, and I'm not exaggerating. It kind of gently but forces the body into a very deep state of rest, different than sleeping. Like people come off the table and say, I feel like I just slept for 5 days. It's this incredible rest. And so the nervous system is like, ooh, I'm not so sure about this. I think I like it, but okay. But after 2 and after 3, the nervous system, it's like a new homeostasis. So like trauma and stress, when we aren't meeting it and are able to deal with it, we're ending up in a neostasis, right? Like a new state. It's not homeostasis anymore. And most of us are probably functioning in this neostasis that might have been going on for years, but that neostasis is not a healthy state. We have too much cortisol, too much stress hormones, that kind of thing. So this brings us back to like a baseline homeostasis that maybe we haven't felt since childhood.
Wow.
So I'm sorry, I get so excited. I'm like, I can tell. I'm like,
Yeah.
woo! But
Right. So these are all things that contribute to that, you know, peace and well-being and calmness
yes,
of the parasympathetic system.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And this, like, last thing on this piece, that if you get those 3 sessions or 4, you won't. It's not something that I mean, it will stick. It'll stick, and your nervous system, like, you'll encounter something that maybe would have prior brought you a stress response, or you felt stressful, and you just don't anymore. You don't feel that response anymore, or you notice it coming and then it just subsides. So it's pretty, it does a lot. It does a lot. So yeah, I hope
That's
everybody could try it
amazing.
out.
I love all this amazing
Yeah.
technology that is coming out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great.
Did you have another tool you were mentioning, or?
I think that's, we can just, yeah, we could do a demonstration thing if you'd like, a havening we could talk
Yeah, of
about.
havening.
Show,
Okay. Are you guys ready to haven? Should we have people think of something that brings them stress? I would like for them to be able to measure kind of how they feel before, kind of with
yes,
their
yes,
dowsing.
definitely. Yeah, that's a great
So,
idea.
so what do we need to have? Because everybody can participate, or do we need a guinea pig?
No, we can do it as a group for sure.
Okay.
And yeah, this is a great place to douse if you'd like to. And oh yeah, I can talk about more dowsing with Ness in a little bit if we want to, but yeah, if you've got your pendulum and you want to do that, or
Okay. I've
however
got my
people douse.
pendulum. So what do we need to be
Okay.
thinking of?
Yes. So let's do a really simple one with just breathing before we move into, just so you get the feel of of what we're doing, with havening. So yeah, so I'd love you just to check in right now, take a moment, just sense into your own body and all up and down, like the whole body. And I want you just to notice what you notice, where there's tension. Maybe you have pain from something, or maybe you're dealing with an emotional thing right now. So I'd love you with your dowsing, zero to 10. So 10 would be the stressful you could feel. Zero would be like Zen. So
Okay.
see what your number is for you right now from 0 to 10.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. So give everybody a
And
moment
stress
to
can
get,
be good stress, but it can still be
it can
stress.
be, yeah.
Your
Even
cortisol
if
can
it's
be
good.
going. Yeah.
Yes. And even with that though, right? Maybe we're amped up in the body. Maybe we still have, right? Our heart is racing, or we have some tension, or yeah. So you want to just, yeah, get that number really for, it's kind of like, how peaceful is my body? Is it just completely at peace, or is it really, distressed? So you think everybody has their number by now? Should we?
Give me a thumbs up if you've got your number. Okay. I'm seeing thumbs. All right.
Okay. Okay. So then you've got your number. That's your baseline to start. So let me show you. Can you see, Mary, I can't see myself. Can you see my hands?
Yes.
And
Okay. So, and I'll mimic you.
yeah, havening touch, you guys, and it's so simple, but it's just rubbing your palms together really gently. Not like that when you're kind of creating an energy flow, right? Just really gentle, rubbing them nice and easy. This creates delta waves. Already you're creating delta waves by just rubbing your hands together. And then just stroking down to your elbows as well. This is the other part of the havening touch. I mean, this always feels good. I find myself just doing this when I don't even know, like I'm not even really thinking about something, and I realize, oh, I must be self-soothing right now, and I don't even know why, but I'm just doing this. And then rubbing above the eyes and below the eyes. Or really you could just, like Mary, you can kind of just rub your face in general. And they have done studies, EEG studies, and people in MRIs, and that's how they came up with these three places that they create the most delta waves, like the fastest. But people ask me, can I rub my hands on my thighs? And I'm like, well, you probably can and create delta waves. But if you like these three, you just want to. I like to move between them all. I know Mary and I've done some havening, and sometimes I'll just move between them all. But if you just like one or want to stick with one for this exercise or tonight, that's totally fine. Or forever, if you only ever just rub your hands together, that's fine. Um, and a quick example of just the power of this is I had a friend who was at a board meeting, and she needed to get up and talk in like 15 minutes, and she felt really nervous. She's around this big table with, all these people at this board. And she said, I was just feeling really anxious. So under the table, with her hands under the table, she just did this for the 10 or 15 minutes before she had to talk. And when she got up, she was fine. So very, very impactful. Looks so simple, but okay. So you've got your number. All right.
Mhm.
And so Mary's already havening. So let's just, yeah, we can just start havening together. However you want to haven. And go ahead and close your eyes, please. And I'd like everybody to take a nice deep breath, nice big inhale and a long, slow exhale while you're havening. And just keep going. Do a 3 to 5 deep inhales, long, slow exhale while you continue to haven. Doing great. And maybe if you want, you can either continue with the long, deep inhale and I'm sorry, the deep inhale and long, slow exhale, or you could do the box breath like I talked about while you're havening. Maybe inhale to the count of 4 and hold for 4 and exhale for 4 and hold for 4. And just repeat that a couple of times if you'd like. So however you want, just be focused on your breath. We'll just do this for about 30 more seconds. And for the last 15 seconds, put a smile on your face. Just let your lips turn up a little bit on the corner. Just a nice smile. Okay, good. So go ahead and rest your hands in your lap, please. So this is where we just check in again. If you'd like to douse again and see what number now on 0 to 10 you find that you're at. What was yours, Mary? What happened for you?
I started with an 8 and I am at 0. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Love it. Does anybody else want to share? This would be a great moment if people do want to share how their number shifted or how their body shifted, what that felt like. Is that cool, or do we not do
Yeah,
talking? Is that
absolutely.
not okay?
Yeah. Does someone
I
want to
can do it.
share or um,
Just like what did you feel in that very simple exercise?
I went from a 10 to a 0 for sure.
Okay, nice.
that's
That's pretty
great.
big. Awesome. Wow.
And that was not even 5 minutes. I mean, that was short and sweet.
Yeah.
Anybody else have something that they want to share or something that maybe came up?
8 to 2, somebody said. Okay. Awesome.
And that's just a basic example of havening. Um,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
can do so much more.
Yeah. We'll do another. If anyone has a question or wants to comment on that, feel free. Or I just saw Linda. Hey,
Yeah.
Linda. See you.
So do
Oh, 5 to 0.
how do you
Cool.
yeah, that's great. Do you want to do an example of havening where you talk people through things a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yeah. Do that for
Okay.
sure. Yes. Are there any questions though that are coming up in the chat that we should? I haven't looked at
No,
it. I
I am
didn't.
not seeing any. If you guys have one,
Okay.
just type it in and I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do another one. This is one so that's obviously a really good example of what you can do anywhere, pretty much at any time. And that's what I love about this, because sometimes we're places where, you know, we might not want to be doing this, but you can pretty much always rub your hands. And if you feel like you don't want people to know what you're doing or something, I mean, you can even walk down the street. Another actually good exercise is to walk in nature while havening. It's so beautiful. It's just to take a walk and just rub your hands together or do this, because you can use havening to put in actually positive things, not just to bring out of distress. So like if you have, and I'll get to that example, Mary, we're going to do that, but these things are just coming up for me. Like if you have something that really good that's going on and you're feeling fantastic someday, take time to actually haven with that and accentuate that feeling, and you're actually going to be um, helping the amygdala that way. So it's like we can sort of, in a way, de-encode things, but we can also put things in actually to the amygdala, because the amygdala is responsive in distress, but it's also in eustress, in the good stress, right? So that's what's so beautiful about havening to me, using this electroceutical delta wave to actually prime our brain for more resilience or more positivity or more love. You can do it with a partner, if you want to. This can be super sweet. I worked with a couple one time, you guys, where it was their anniversary, and we were on Zoom, and they sat really close to each other, and he would haven down her arms while he shared with her all of the beautiful, whatever he thought about her. He affirmed her. And so it was so amazing. It was like 3 minutes of him rubbing down her arms and just affirming his love for her, and like what he was thinking when she came down the aisle, stuff like that. And I was in tears, they were in tears. Then we switched it. And it was a very powerful experience to share with somebody. So you can
Sounds
partner.
amazing. You're right. Like, what an incredible thing to do with your partner and to encode that in your brain. I mean,
Yes.
wow. Or with
Yeah.
kids,
Yes, with
even.
kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Kids teaching a
the,
child to do, to soothe themselves and self-regulate this way is easy and fun. And they could even, oh, y'all, another cool thing, you can stroke a pet and you're still creating those delta waves in the brain. So, like I had a client one time who could not think of what made her feel safe. She had a lot we were working on. But the one thing she could think of was her German Shepherd. And so we would have that German Shepherd with her in our sessions, sitting right by her, and she would haven on him and stroke him, and it would elicit that sense of safety for her. So it ended up being a healing thing for her. So
it's amazing. So
yeah.
did what you just showed us, is that what you would call the CPR?
Yeah, so we're gonna do an exercise right now that's CPR.
Okay.
So
Well, let's pause for 1 second. Joanna had a question. She felt like she missed, where did havening come from?
sure.
So we're going to do a quick recap for anyone who maybe came
Yeah,
in
I can
late
do
and
it.
missed that.
Yeah. So yes, there's a guy with Mind Valley. His name's Paul McKenna. He's a Brit.
We had the two
Um,
brothers who were the neuroscience.
yes. So these two brothers, Americans, and he came to them and said, "Why does EFT work? How does EFT work?" He wanted to know. This is like 13 years ago, 14 years ago. So they took, no, it's probably longer than that, 20 years. I'm sorry. I think it's like 20 years ago. They just took all this time. They had busy practices as well. So they felt like they were able to come to the pieces of the neuroscience that had not yet been spoken about or written about. And I will say this, I'm really glad this came up. I haven't said this yet. Think about it this way, guys. To me, this is so beautiful. The power of touch. And what the Rudins would say, these brothers, is that so when a newborn is birthed and has just come through that really probably harrowing experience, and they come out and they cry out, and they say that that newborn is saying, am I safe, am I loved, because I've just come out of the safety of the womb, and now they're so that they're crying, and that's that asking to their mom, am I safe and am I loved. And so that at that point they say the amygdala is lit up, and it's sort of like waiting to see what's going to happen. And what happens is the mother takes that newborn, maybe nurses them, but just strokes
Hopefully,
their face, strokes their body. Yes, in a night,
in an
in the
ideal
right world.
situation.
Well, and because when they don't, you can see why trauma can be encoded at birth, right? But in a beautiful situation where just the mother holds and strokes that baby, then the amygdala is calm right away. And that's just that soothing touch, and that relationship from the beginning makes them, just brings them into the world resilient, and then primed for touch for their whole life. Like, so soothing touch, we all know what soothing touch feels like. And it starts there. We're really primed for it from that point on. So that is the ideal situation. But I really love to think about all of this same touch was hopefully done when we were born. And if not, we can we can heal that space. But does that
Well,
make
they've done a
sense?
lot of studies where the children, the babies who were not touched, it's
Yeah.
failure to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. The and something that I thought of, there's the EMDR. I forget
Mhm.
exactly what that stands for, like eye rapid movement desensitization or something. I like to think of this as like a next multiple generations in the future from what that was. Is that
So yeah, well, I mean, again, my understanding, I'm not EMDR certified. It does use the eye motions and the early havening. They actually had people looking left to right because that stimulates delta waves. So that's actually another thing you can do. But a lot of haveners are EMDR certified and came through the EMDR like first and went into havening. They still probably use it sometimes, but again, I don't want to I think it's very, very powerful. I haven't even experienced it, but it does tend, havening tends to work faster. Maybe generally what might take 8 sessions of EMDR is could be 1 or 2 or 3 with havening, and it's generally more gentle and less intense. And so I think a lot of people like that.
that has been my experience. I have done both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that can be for PTSD that they do for people in combat, but they do it for lots of things. But I like to think of havening as a beautiful, yeah, shortcut, simple process. You don't have to relive anything. It meets you where you're at.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people can have pretty big responses and crying and all of that, you know what I mean? But it's we don't have to activate that to get to the healing too. Do you know what I mean? We don't have to relive and reactivate in quite the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is a beautiful
So,
piece. So,
yeah.
okay, great. I think that answered those questions. I appreciated that. Yeah, so we want to
Let's do
try a
the
new
CPR.
okay.
Okay, cool. So we're going to do this a group thing again, like we did last time. And what I'd like you to do is think about right now a situation in your life that's bothering you. So don't go to your biggest trauma though tonight. Okay, maybe try to keep it at a five number, or you can douse for that. But I would not something super distressful. I mean, it could be something that you've got tomorrow that you're concerned about, or something that's kind of a mild to medium distress. So pick a situation that's creating some distress for you.
And if you want to douse where you're at currently, you're welcome to do that.
Yeah, we do want to get a number again on that. Um, so if you want to douse for the number of that distress is creating. Um, I mean, it could be something like, oh, I've had back pain or haven't been sleeping well. It doesn't have to be like an event. I mean, a big event. It could just be something you've been feeling, right? Like if you've been feeling sad or something like that. When we're
got it.
actually we're we're basing the 0 to 10 on the feeling. Sorry, it's whether it's an experience or you know what I mean. Like don't go to like necessarily a car wreck when you were 12 kind of thing. Something right now that's weighing on you. So does everybody have that thing? Or raise your hand if you don't yet have that thing.
Or
Actually, I don't think I can see everybody. So,
if
um,
you're good. Yeah.
so yeah, go ahead and get if you haven't already, find your number. I guess we've probably already done that. So we're going to touch base back to that. Okay. And what I'd like you to do, so I'd love you to close your eyes again, please. And I'd like you to notice in your body how it feels when you're thinking about this thing or situation or feeling. Where is it in the body and what does that feel like? You're just taking note. Tight chest, tight gut, whatever it might be, just really notice. You've got your number and give it a few more seconds just to put some attention on that sensation. Like activate it, kind of highlight it a little bit. Okay. So everybody can open your eyes, please. And we're just going to start havening. Okay. And I'm going to guide you through some things to do as a group. We'll do them silently. So it might be good actually if you are muted so you can say things out loud and we won't hear you. So please just do the havening touch however you want to do the havening touch. I'm going to be doing it, but you don't have to do the way I'm doing it. You just do it however you would like to and whatever feels good to you. So we're going to just hum a song out loud together. And I think Zoom's kind of funny with humming. We'll see if you can hear me, but it's okay. You don't have to
they're
follow me, but
muted.
it'll be.
I think we'll all
What's
mute
that?
ourselves and
Yeah.
we'll each hum, but we'll let you do
Yes.
the
Yes. That's cool.
okay.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So I'm going to just hum Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and y'all can hum with me. And if you don't hear me, just hum, and then we'll come back together. So, mm, 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 mm. 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 Okay, I made it through that. So I don't know if y'all did, but that's all fine. Keep havening. And what I'm going to do is give you a few simple math problems like 5 times 2, something really simple. And I just want you to say the answer out loud. Again, everybody's still muted. Okay, so just say the response while you're havening. So 3 plus 5 and 1 times 4. I know these are really simple. 2 times 6. 7 minus 5, and 10 times 4. And now I'm just going to say some numbers and just repeat the numbers out loud. So 4,321, 70,653, 22.6, and 376. All right, awesome. Now, what I'd love you to do, go back and close your eyes for a moment. And I'd like you to pretend that you're jumping on a trampoline. All right, so you're just jumping up and down. And what I'd love you to do is really get into it first person. So don't see yourself, but be in on the trampoline, bouncing up and down. Feel what it feels like on your feet to hit the mat or the trampoline, going high up in the air. What does that feel like when you come down? And I'd love you to count out loud each bounce. So we're going to go 1 to 20. So I'd love you to, your number is going to be when your feet hit the trampoline. So everybody might be at a different place, which is fine. So you just count out loud from 1 to 20. And I'm going to be quiet and let you do the counting. Mary, are you still counting? Did you finish? Okay, we're good. All right, so you can open your eyes or keep them closed. It's up to you. And I'm going to just almost done. And I'm going to just spell, I'd like to ask you to spell some words out loud. So I'd like you just to spell out loud flower while you're still havening. All right. And why don't you spell apple backwards? don't worry if you get it wrong, because that it's actually just to distract the what we call the working memory. So it's you don't have to get it right. How about spelling pillow out loud? All right, and one more. Let's spell grass backwards. All right, super duper. Okay, so before you stop havening, take 2 nice deep breaths with a good slow exhale again. One more time. And Mary, you can unmute yourself if you like. And everybody just rest your hands in your lap. And I'd like you to close your eyes and check back in on the body and see what you notice that's different from when you began. Just anything that you notice. And see what your number has shifted to as well.
Big shift for me.
Okay, what was that for you, Mary? What's the number shift?
The well, I went from 6 to 0. And my body shifted quite a bit. I had a lot of tension in my neck and
Okay.
in my chest. And then just before we got started, I had this whole spasm that went down the left side of my back.
Yeah.
So that has all shifted.
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah, I'm seeing what people have put in the comments as well. Did anyone not have it shift at all? Is it normal to tear up? Is that what, Joanna?
Is it normal
Is that
to
what you said?
tear up? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it, how does that feel, if you want to say? Is it strong emotion or is it a tender 4 to 0?
Yeah, there's a
For
4
me,
to
it was
0.
more letting go. Like it was
Oh,
coming out, and it was like just
yeah,
you're up. Yeah. So I
yeah,
don't know if it's normal
absolutely.
or, but
Sure. Yes. I mean, an emotional response is quite normal. Yeah. Because I do, yeah, something is shifting, right? We've just had the brain, the amygdala kick in with us in a certain way. And often, yeah, when something is moving or moving out, we can feel that um, sweet response. I would say is that, yeah. How did it, if you mind, do you mind sharing what shifted for you or what you noticed in your body that was different?
it went from feeling it in my heart,
Mhm.
a deep guilt and pain to not deep, but like a 5 or a 6. I mean, but still pretty deep
Okay.
to like releasing it and just letting it go.
Mm. Mm.
And I was tearing up like the jumping on the trampoline and I don't know, it was
Yeah.
just woo.
Yeah.
So
Great. I love that.
I did too.
Cool. I'm
It
so
was
glad you.
good. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have
Oh, you're welcome.
someone, Mona says that she went from 9 to love and her feet are
Oh,
tingling and
wow.
she definitely teared up. So
Oh, that's gorgeous. 9 to love. Yes. Did anyone, if anyone wants to say, did anyone not go down in number at all? Just curious if that happened to anybody. Doesn't sound like it.
I
It's
am
not a
not.
bad thing. Okay. I mean, if that were to happen to anyone or you only went down one number, then you just go again because it will shift itself. Like, or you, if for any reason it never shifted or wouldn't, then after 2 rounds, then you might just go, what else is here? Because there actually might be something else that's just calling for your attention. Like maybe you were focused on one thing and there's actually something else that then you go and do a havening round on that, if that makes sense. But this is CPR. So, and that stands for, it's CPR like we think of, right, where you're resuscitating, but it also stands for creating personal resilience. And so every time you do that, you are actually creating more resilience in the brain. And Dr. Kate Truitt, oh, that's somebody we should write in the um, chat, if you'd like. Dr. Kate Truitt has a wonderful YouTube channel. She's become a friend of mine. She's amazing. She's written a couple books, and she's got a really good book called Healing in Your Hands. And the whole thing is self-havening application to life, and it's phenomenal. But her YouTube is just chock full of like 10-minute havening kinds of things that you do along with her. She'll have them for grief, for guilt, for anxiety. So I really recommend it. So much free resource there. So I was going to say what Kate says as a neuroscientist herself, she's a psychologist as well, but she feels like if we were to CPR and self-haven with ourselves regularly, that we wouldn't need to go to the biggest traumas in our life and work on them, that by doing what comes up, often and regularly, by just like what we just did, by just continuing to depotentiate these things that pop up, we'll take care of that, if that makes sense. It's that healing to the amygdala. That was pretty powerful.
So there may be a little upset that we could do, or that we could actually do that. And you're saying if we do that on a regular basis, then when the big stuff comes up, it's not quite as dramatic or traumatic. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, yes. And that, like, I guess my understanding is it would be, like, maybe a house of cards type thing or whatever. You don't have to bring down the whole house. As you do the smaller type things, you're eventually bringing that down. So if there was a bigger trauma from your life, but you're just working on what's present now, you're working on that, if that makes sense.
So we have a question. Yes, yeah. Do we have a question? Do you choose any numbers or words to spell? And are we always on a trampoline?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm telling you what, I'm happy to, you tell me how to do this, Mary, the best way. I have a form. It's a 2-page form for CPR for the amygdala, and it'll walk you through that. And I'm happy to get that to you however you want.
If you want to email that to me, we'll include it in the replay as a download.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for whoever put that in there, correct spelling of Kate Truitt.
Yeah, I'm glad you. Oh yeah, Dr. Kate Truitt.
Yeah, so I think you can kind of make it up as you go, but that there's like a general format, and her worksheet is very helpful for that. And I will also say that so that's just something that we can do ourselves, but if you want to go deeper, or you have something maybe that's longstanding or feels beyond your CPR capabilities, you can book a session with Julie or a havening practitioner, and it's remarkable. Do you want to say what might be different in a session?
Yeah, for sure. And I want to go back to that last question too. I'll send you the form, but I have a quick go-to when something's coming up. I haven and I start singing Old MacDonald Had a Farm. And I just get really into it. And that's the other thing too. Once you've felt that feeling and the sensation, you don't stay on it. Okay. So maybe different from other mindful practices where I am trained in something called the wonder method, which is totally different because you actually stay with the sensation in a very light way. But here you don't. But you're not trying to push it away either. But like in my example, you're like, oh, I'm feeling blah, blah, blah. And it's an 8. And when you just can go into your distractions and get really into them, that is actually healing the amygdala versus focusing on that, right? So we feel it, get our number, but then quickly shift off that. So I'll get in a rousing version of Old MacDonald. I'll go through a number of animals. And honestly, or I see myself, doing something I used to love as a kid, or any distraction works. So singing, counting, pretend you're going to the grocery store and picking something from the letters of the alphabet and putting in your cart, like anything like that, that's it uses the brain in a certain way, counting, spelling, singing, motor skills, all of that really works to help depotentiate the amygdala. So that sheet will tell you some more things like that, but I just want to give you a quick example. It doesn't have to be 4 sets of something. I mean, you could usually after I've sung Old MacDonald a few times and I check back in, I'm like, whoa, I've already I've already gone down 3 numbers. And the goal, 0 isn't actually the goal. It can be, but it's that you feel better. If 1 round and you just feel better, then trot off into your day. You know what I mean? Or do 2 rounds till you feel like you want to feel. Could be a 1, could be a 2, but that's way better than an 8. And maybe that's enough. You know what I mean? So,
Exactly.
okay. Yeah. What did
And
you
so
just
if
say to me?
somebody's having a
Oh,
private session with you,
yeah.
it's these things and more that you do, and you can go
Yes.
deeper.
Quite a lot of actual protocols. Like we have something called recreating a past narrative. We can go back into a past experience and change the outcome and really tinker that way. We can work towards a future thing. If you had a speaking engagement that you felt nervous about or something coming up, we can actually haven that way towards a future of it. Yeah, event, a trauma, but it is better. I think, my own experience is better to have a session with a havening practitioner for the big things because, sometimes you don't, you get an emotional enough maybe that you kind of lose your track or, you lose your focus or whatever. And I mean, I've had some clients with some pretty big things where I'm sure glad they were with me because, they weren't quite ready to handle what came up for them and that kind of thing. And I can walk you through it or distract you, or I'm skilled in knowing how to do it in that moment to be with you. Um, um, but really just, we can work on a theme, an event, an experience, a future thing, a past thing, all that. And I'll give you an example of a really cool, so I had a friend one time, she came to me, she's a friend, but she had an image stuck in her mind. Like for a year, you guys, she had this image that like woke up in the middle of the night in a panic, and it was her under ice trying to get out. And maybe to you just feeling that doesn't do anything for you, but for her it was a massive trigger. She'd been to a somatosensory therapist who was really, really good, but just hadn't gotten through this, hadn't gotten past it. So she goes like, can we try havening? So we went through lots of things with this, and man, we were like, the hour was almost up and it hadn't shifted. And then I asked her a question. I just said, if you could be a superhero character right now, no, mind you, we're havening the whole time. I said, if you could be a character and you could do anything you wanted to get out of this situation, what would you do? And she said, oh, I'd become Wonder Woman, And I said, well, do in your mind's eye what you would do. So she saw havening, but Wonder Woman, bah, broke through the ice, that kind of thing. And she came out on this land. And at that moment, she started, actually, you know what? She was havening like this, but her hands stopped in front of her face. And I thought the screen had frozen because she was there for so long, like just like this. I thought she'd frozen up, but she had stopped because she all of a sudden had the revelation of what that image meant to her. And it had to do with being trapped in her family situation, like her whole life. And as soon as the revelation hit and she had broken through, like the entire thing just cascaded, all of the emotion, she started crying. She was never bothered by that image again at all, So that's an example where kind of a very stuck thing, we were able to get through, and she couldn't get through it on her own. So that's a
Yeah,
pretty cool
and
example.
just I love that. And to speak to one of the experiences that I've had, was I had a situation that was very troubling. And so we did quite a bit of havening. I had a haven around it. And then someone else popped in to my mind during that session. And, I said whatever I needed to say. And that relationship, which was not even the focus of this session, shifted like 1000%. It's remarkable. So yeah, it's a remarkable, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Carol
And I don't
asked,
even
are all these
know.
techniques?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, let me say this real quick.
Yeah, yeah.
It's every session like a blank canvas, and I just feel like I get to paint on there with somebody, and I never know where it's going to go, how it's going to happen. Everyone is different, it is becomes so remarkable like that. And can I say one more example? just real quick. And then,
Absolutely. Yeah, the residual effects, you just don't even know the positive outcomes.
yeah.
I mean, they can show up later, like some of the things for me. Yeah.
I had a woman come to me who's a therapist and is really skilled therapist. And she but she couldn't get through this. And she tried all of her things she knew to do. And her first birth of her child ended up being very traumatic for her and very disappointing. And she had tons of grief about that. And so that had been, I think 3 years prior. And she was about to give birth to her second. And she had so much fear and angst about it again. And again, she just tried so many things. And 20 minutes of havening, walking through some stuff. I mean, I could tell. Like sometimes you can see when it falls. And she just started to weep, and it was gone. She could not find that emotion or anything. And the birth went great, and it was amazing. And that's where it's a powerful tool. Just in and of itself, it's just amazing.
I love it. It is very powerful. So Carol asked, are all these techniques together called havening or the movements?
Such a good question. Yeah, so havening is this, but there are a set of techniques called the havening techniques that all use this touch. But yeah, so what I mentioned were like recreating the past or doing a future event. Those are all the techniques. There's a very powerful technique that I wouldn't recommend doing on your own. I know you're going to want to go do it now. Maybe I should say
Well, you
I'll
mentioned that you might be having a havening workshop in the future. So if you guys are interested, um, we can put your information, what I mean, just that, or if there's enough interest in doing
yeah,
a workshop along this lines.
yeah,
Am I right? Did I understand that
sure,
correctly?
sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And there's a question.
It has a lot of application. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Somebody who's looking for the name of the doctor in Scottsdale that has the flow presso.
Yes, Doctor, I think it was first name. It's Drobot, Drobot, Dr. Drobot. And I can't, I don't know his first name, but I think you'd be able to find him, or I'll find him. I can tell you, Mary,
Well,
again.
you can also go
Oh,
to
yeah.
Julie's website, juliegosh.com. Is
Yeah,
that
you can
correct?
email me too,
Or
or email me. Uh-huh.
Tolmao. And she's got information about the flow presso on her website as well as havening and these other techniques that she does.
Yeah. But I can also, we don't have on our Havening headquarter website, there's not a listing yet of practitioners. We're working on it, but I can ask for you too. And it's Dr. Jeff Drobot. So if anyone wants to, it's Jeoff. Oh, there it goes. Somebody put in there. Thank you,
Oh,
Laura.
someone already did.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, you're on the kind of cutting edge. So we have about 10 more minutes. I don't know if we have questions or if you wanted to kind of go over some of the other things that you do. Where would we like to go? That was just so rich.
Thank you. Well, now, I mean, does everybody feel, even just after this tonight, that they could practice like what we did? Does that feel good? Do you want me to go over any of that? Or like if you tomorrow wanted to practice it?
So if you're stuck in traffic tomorrow and you're finding your stress level raised, do you guys feel like you could, do some of this, or um, do we have questions about that?
Yeah, somebody wrote in there. I saw something about physical. Well, I should just look. Um,
Did you say it could be used for physical pain?
yes, that's such a good question. It can, and the way you would do what we did tonight, if you have pain, like this would be just for self-application, is just focus on that pain in the body, douse or however you want to get your number. And then you just do the CPR on that pain. I mean, you do your distractions, having focused on the physical pain, and then you just see where that can go. Like an example for me is I was having some gut, like this, not really pain, but some gut stuff. Um, I did a few rounds of havening. It went down, and then I did a couple of days. some havening a few times in the day, and that it really, really cleared up. And I didn't know what that was, but yes, you can focus on pain, and any way that we just did, I mean, is a really good tool. A lot of times the pain is connected to something, emotional, and that's why it really can work. I've definitely seen in one-to-one sessions where we're working on something not related to pain, but then the pain subsides when that thing subsides, if that makes sense. But you know what, havening is, anyone, a practitioner would say it's actually very helpful for chronic pain.
Oh, that's great to know.
Because generally again, that might be connected to some experience that you had, or, and like, gosh, so many amazing stories, like a woman whose thumb was hurting, and she went back to some accident that she had when she was in London, and she had gone back to London, and the thumb was hurting again, and once that event was cleared up, what we do one-to-one, one of the main things is called event havening, where we specifically go to an event. So and we depotentiate the event.
So if somebody had something that was ongoing with their foot that no doctor could really figure out why one of the feet was a particular way, that might be something to haven on.
Yeah, especially if you know when that started. Like if you can pinpoint when it started, that's a pretty good, like you go, bingo, let's start there. What was going on at that time? What happened, right? And then we can take a look at that. And very often that pain will clear up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And someone says, seems like it'd be useful in getting to sleep.
Yes, it can be very useful in getting to sleep. I mean, I have used that. I know my mom, bless her, she's 88. She's so cute. She's like, she's she can't, she's rubbing her hands together. So yeah, because the delta waves put you in a relaxed state. Like that's the other thing, is coming out of a session, people are so blissed out, usually, even if we've worked on deep emotional content, because their delta waves are just, so they feel really good. So yes, prior to sleep, it's a really good idea to maybe go through your day and see if there's anything still resonating with you in a strong way or a disturbing way, or even if you're just ruminating, and do some CPR like we did earlier on your day kind of thing. And when you feel like you've cleared up your day, if that makes sense, that might only take a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, but then you usually can drift off to sleep because you're not ruminating, you're not carrying an emotional issue from the day. So I find that super helpful. Or even just another thing is, before bed, you could put on some music that you love, that's relaxing, and haven and do some breathing, and that's going to help you fall asleep too. Something like that. You can skip the music, whatever, but whatever's calming to you, and haven while you do it.
People can just do just the motions, any one or any combination of those motions when they're going to bed, but they don't need to do the jumping on the trampoline or the counting or any of that. They can just keep it very simple. Yeah. We have some fun comments.
Can I say one more thing,
saying,
Mary,
looking forward to showing my grandsons this, and someone else is excited to share this with her daughter, who's a CEO.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Yes. The children tend to love this a lot, and they know how, if they have a song they love, right? And they can just haven and sing their little song, they can really help themselves.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be for an upset.
Exactly. Yeah, just to infuse a positive feeling, or just to feel calmer in a moment or whatever, right? Yeah, anytime. So
I have a new grandson. I was just thinking, I wonder if I can do some of those simple little movements for him, on him.
There's videos of babies who are crying and upset, and people just, again, rub their face, rub their hands, rub down their arms, and the babies will calm down. You should try that. If he's a little upset or something, and he's been fed and all that kind of thing, try havening, or just haven when he's not upset, because it'll feel really good to him. Yeah, for sure.
Love that idea.
Yeah.
So let's see. We talked about pets, kids, and ourselves and our parents. So yeah, it's.
I was thinking too. I'm sorry, Mary. I'm
so powerful.
Thank you. I was going to say touch, we have these C-tactile fibers, and that's why this gentle touch is so calming. And, somebody, again, we talked about the baby comes into the world with touch. And then what do we do when people are transitioning? We sit with them and we stroke them. We hold their hand. They leave. I mean, again, in a beautiful situation, they leave with touch. It's the last thing, right, that's present with them. We rub, or if somebody's upset, we rub, what do we hold their hands. Or sometimes we even go to somebody and we stroke down their arms. We're like, it's okay, I'm here. It's really innate within us for these types of touch. So
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. So I just can't thank you enough. It's been fabulous. So if we have any last minute questions for Julie, put them in the chat. But Julie, if you want to hold of how they do that?
You cut out a tiny bit there, Mary. Did you say getting up to get a
Through your
hold of me?
website? Is that what you prefer?
Yes. Yes,
I
that's
just
great.
said
Well, and
remind people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So my email went in the chat at the very beginning. It should still be up there, which is a great way. And then for the month of May, for any of you guys participating, I have a discount on havening sessions. So it's normally 150 an hour, but I'm doing 120 for May. And that goes really for anything if you wanted biofield tuning or I didn't get to talk about Nest, but if you wanted a tuning session or anything like that, I will offer a 20% discount to anybody in here for that month if you wanted to check it out.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Do you want to give a quick little just tell what Ness is? Because that's one of your mini tools, or is it possible to condense it?
I can do it really quick, really, really quick. There's good content on the website about it. So, but it's a form of bioenergy medicine. So I was going to say at the beginning, I didn't talk about it. I use dowsing with Ness because you can do a free scan too if you want to, totally free, and look at all of the results. If you want to have me review that, there is a fee for that. But you could still go to my website. It'll show you how to do that on the Nest page. And it's pretty cool. It's fun to check out. It just gives you a ton of information about your feels. It measures and scans the feels of the body, the feels around the organs. It can tell you where you have trapped emotions and themes, and that's where we can douse and work on those to see them release. I can haven alongside of that. There are infoceuticals that people can purchase to help correct the information in the field, but it's fun. But you can read about it on the website. But it's a lot of really nice information there. And the people who work with Nest for a number of months really feel a significant shift emotionally and physically. So that's pretty sweet. But that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, so people could go to your website and douse, what modality would be beneficial and what percentage would be beneficial, right? We can douse like that too.
There you go. That's a great idea.
JulieGosh.com. And I think you have I cannot say that, Tolmao Wellness.
Tolmao.
You want to type that in the chat for people?
Yes.
That.
Yeah.
So, and
it actually all goes to the same. But.
Okay, and if you are not on the Lone Star Dowsers email list and would like to join, you can send me a private message, and I'll with your email, and I will add you to the list so we let you know who is going to be coming up, and I'll also include the Zoom link. And then when we send the replays out, and if there's any handouts, you'll receive that too. So it's great, and we appreciate your donations. They help keep things going. So that is appreciated. And what else? I just thank everybody for showing up. And Julie, this has been amazing. Thank you. I think havening is a tool that everyone needs in their toolbox. So I've done a lot of work, and I found this to be one of the fastest and easiest things to create great transformation in so many areas. So highly recommend it. So thank you.
Awesome. You bet. Thank you guys. It was super fun to be with you. I appreciate it. Good questions. Thank you.